Rosen here. I'm a fractional COO from Brightpoint Operations, and today on the channel, I am so excited to welcome David. David Carneal is the founder of the Digital Efficiency Consulting Group, and he is an operations workflow consultant with 25 years of experience in process improvement and diagnostics. David is also a perspective navigator who helps businesses and individuals understand the various perspectives that influence a situation, helping them make better decisions with more clarity. Welcome, David. I'm so glad to have you here.
I appreciate it.
So I probably didn't do you enough justice with that introduction. So if you don't mind, for those watching and listening, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Thank you. So I've been in the ops world for 25 years. I've worked primarily in the optical industry. And about 5 years ago, during COVID, I decided I was done with corporate and I would start my own firm, go in the family business, as it were, and
Yes.
realized that workflows are me. I don't think there's anything I do that I don't think of a workflow concept. So started it, ended up getting some wonderful clients. One of them hired me, went that way for a little while, realized, nope, I don't want to do this again, and went back to it.
Yes.
And then over the years, I've always been big into perception. Every time I spoke to a colleague, leadership, a team member, it was, what's the perception we're facing here? And over time, perception alignment became one of the things I was known for and I work on. And it allows me to navigate through life a little bit differently than most.
Very, very good. And it's interesting you speak to perspective because we like in business, we often think of absolutes and we think of things being the truth and that there's one story and the numbers tell us one thing and that's that. So maybe dig in a little bit more about how it's really about how different people have different perceptions of the same thing.
It's very true. And actually, this was just proven last week. I happened to be on a cruise. I go on cruises as a way of, I continue working and it's a change of scenery, so to
Well, that's
speak.
a good idea.
And I've gotten close with some of the people on the ships. They give me private tours. They allow me to interview them. So I come back with a little too much data and I've built too much work for myself from trips. But I was sitting next to this wonderful family of six, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brother, sister. So perfect, 222 on the generation. And
Hmm.
asked them a simple question. What's something you've noticed on the cruise that you don't think other guests have? I was expecting them all to say basically the same type of answer, maybe a little differently, being the generation gap. And every single one blew me away with just an in-depth, completely different answer. And they experienced the same cruise, the same dinners, the same shows, yet their brains took it in a different spot. So perception is very important. You can all be in the same boardroom having the same discussion and walk out. And even though the same words were iterated by each person, everybody saw the same slide deck. They all walk away with a different story in their mind and a different level of what needs to be done. Some will see it as a success. Some will think, oh, this was a waste of time. But unless you align those perspectives, a lot of times, the projects fail or get derailed sooner rather than later. So
Absolutely, and it's a very human thing, I think, to forget that. Like it's something that even myself, as someone who has a career background that has process in it, and even though I know this to be true, I still find myself having forgetting that and having to remind myself of that piece about the different perceptions. So that brings me to what I wanted to dig in a bit more is about the framework. I think you've spoken to this. I might not be having the name completely right, but the three realities that organizations find themselves in. Tell us more a little bit about that. I really like how you've laid that out.
So for years, whether I was working in a company, with a company, directly or indirectly, I always went through the three realities. So leadership would tell me what's going on, what they believe is wrong. I call it the fairy tale. And the reason I call it the fairy tale is there's truth in it, but it's from their point of view. So they don't get in the nitty gritty very often. So it's a very high level, take for, a fairy tale, so to speak. Princess meets prince, they fall in love, they live happily ever after. Very easy.
Right.
There's not a great deal of
Hmm.
story in there. And they believe things are running smoother than they are. They believe, oh, so and so does this department does this. So I take that down, I digest it. I then look at the SOPs. I look at the documents they provide. What does the company claim is being done? How were things originally set up? Because we
What
all
did
know.
good look like when someone wrote the SOP, right?
Well, and the sad part is, and it's true, is SOPs are a great tool, and if kept up and up to date, they are fantastic. A new employee comes in, here are the SOPs. This is how we operate. Someone switches roles. You need to explain something very quickly. SOPs help. The problem is they're not kept up to date. The team members found something that works quicker, or they went rogue and decided to do something, or a new tool was put in place and they didn't update the SOP. But the SOP tells me in what the frame of mind was at the moment they were written. And then I sit down with the actual team and follow the work. So I follow the workflow and the processes from beginning to end. So I go from person to person, task to task, software to software, and record what is actually happening. What buttons are they pressing? What screens are they looking at? I ask for screenshots, ask for explanations. Once I have all that information, I then bring all that information together like a Venn diagram, and I look and see where the overlap is. In a good company, there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of stuff that just is different, and that's fine. In companies that I've seen more issues, there's not a lot of overlap. Leadership is thinking one thing, SOPs are telling a completely different story, and the team members are doing something completely different than the other two. So you want some overlap, but that is how I lay it out, and then I build a report for the leadership, and I tell them flat out. Here's what you told me. Here are the things that were accurate. Here are the things that were not accurate. And here are the opportunities to grow, whether it be redo a workflow, move some things around, bring in new tools, get rid of tools. I don't like talking software right off the bat, and I'm not the
Yeah.
first person to jump into new ERPs and new tools. I think it's a money maker. Most
Mm-hmm.
systems will work for the life of a company unless there's major change, right?
Yes.
It's how you adopt it, and when things are built, you have to think for the future.
Yes. And I'm a big fan of that piece you said about, a thing you might hear me say, introducing myself on my various platforms is I love to improve the ability to scale with the teams and tools people already have. So I'm with you in so much that that process piece is so important. And I almost guarantee that you can do it by enabling the team you have and using the system you already have. And just there's ways to make things more streamlined, simpler, better, all of the above. By just putting some structure in place. But yes, to your point, using the software they already have.
An audit once a year. I don't know many companies that are cash based anymore. Most of them live on bank loans, lines of credit, which is fine. But when you do that, the banks require you to be audited. There's a
Yes,
purpose for that. Why aren't we
exactly.
auditing the workflows? Why aren't we auditing what people are doing and making it part of the culture? Nobody's to blame. Nothing's wrong, but there's always room for improvement. And as technology grows, as people come and go through the company, as companies are bought and sold and merged and
Priorities
acquired,
change. Yeah.
everyday things change.
And how do you go about breaking the news, if you will, or sharing with that leader what the findings are, but without making them feel kind of called out or on the spot, or how does that work?
That's been a hard one, Sarah. Because,
Interesting.
when I was in my early years of working, 19, 20, 21, and I was put in my first position with the company I was with for nearly 20 years, I was the hothead. I had a temper, and I told it as it was, and people did not like it. I had people that were in their 40s, 50s, even 60s looking at this punk 19-year-old, and I'd be like, we're doing this because I say so. Whoa. Today I've learned that it's not about blame. It's nobody did anything wrong. And I mean, if someone did something wrong, that's a different conversation. Pull leadership aside and be like, we have some issues. But most of the time, it's just things have changed. Things have derailed naturally. Think of it as a house. It's not your fault the paint's peeling. You painted 10 years ago. The sun hit it,
That's a
the
great
rain hit
analogy.
it, the wind hit it, weather takes its toll, and it's time to repaint. There should be no hesitation in walking up to a homeowner and going, "Do you see that? It's time to repaint." And if the homeowner is going to get upset, well, then that's on them. And again, perception. And that is where perception really becomes important. Understanding the perception I'm giving, understand the perception they may have, and then understanding their perception of me. So if
Yes.
the team thinks I'm in there to fire people, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Office Space,
Yes.
with Bob and Bob. I'm not
Yeah.
Bob. My job's not to lay people off. My job is not to restructure the company and delete departments and create new departments. My job is simply to audit, look for areas of improvement, provide solutions, and then guide you through it. So it's easy for
Exactly.
me to walk into a boardroom, a meeting room, and say, "Hey, here's what I found," because it's not even coming from a place of blame. It's just coming from a place of observation, and that I make that key in my reports. And there are times people give me weird looks, and I just have to right there stop and go, I see you look uncomfortable. Why? Well, it's not our fault. Nobody said it was. This is just the life of a business. I have never walked into any business that doesn't have these issues.
It's true. I think the founders, and I love to remind them, is you continue to run a really great business that got us to this level of busy, this level of scale. It's your talent and your vision that got us here. And to your point about it being it's a natural evolution of how business works. You build processes to run your business at the time that you build them, and then you go about running your business. And over time, as you grow, processes get stale, they get, they're out of date, what have you, all the things we improve. Yeah, it's not no one's fault. It's actually a wonderful problem to have.
I always like to joke with people. Efficiency is the opposite of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, nobody goes out to say, "I'm going to make things difficult. I'm going to make things expensive. I'm going to," they're not out to do that. I mean, I'm sure some are, but most people aren't.
Yes.
What they're out to do is to evolve. And when you
Mm-hmm.
evolve, approvals add on and are never taken off. New steps are added because a software you used 10 years ago. And when all these things add, all of a sudden you realize you've got three extra people doing work that is not needed. And I'm the first person to say, don't get rid of people. Figure out where they belong, maybe retrain them. But again, as companies keep growing, and take a company, that started by one person and started with 10 people, went to 50, went to 100, went to 1,000, went to 5,000. Over time, things are going to compile, and you're going to look back at the budget and go, why is the budget so much? It never used to cost this much. It's because you added all these levels without addressing everything below. You have to research, you have to investigate before you make decisions. You had a
Yes.
great episode about pricing, and everybody's sitting in the room, and everybody's correct.
Yes, everyone's correct. I love that. And it's everybody has their own perspective,
But
to use your earlier
companies got to
language, right?
define. If you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
KPIs, if you're going to have definitions, there's one definition for the company. That way, nobody has different perspective. This is our margin. This is what it needs to be. This is how we track it. This is what we find ourselves successful, moderately
These are the
successful.
buckets we use to calculate,
Yep.
right?
And
Like
then
there's
you use one system to gather data, one dashboard. That way everybody's looking at the same numbers. And if everybody's looking at the same numbers and everybody's got the same definitions and everybody has the same goals, and you have a dashboard that's telling you yes, no, and not only that, what to do if something happens, margin is slipped, check these areas.
yes.
Then
I've
perception
spent
is aligned. And again, finance can still wonder about margin, sales can still wonder about sales, ops can still wonder if they're going to get product out on time. That's okay. But the things that matter to the company, the perceptions no longer varied by everybody. Everybody's been aligned.
And I think that work is important to do, to invest in. I know it can seem tedious. Like, yeah, sure, we're all aligned, but being truly aligned is so key. I've been, and I'm sure you have too, been in boardrooms where we spend 10 10 to 15% of the meeting itself going, how did we get that number? Oh, but I look at this report, but I look at this one, and this is why mine's right, and this is why mine's
Sally
right.
uses the Excel file.
Yeah, and we keep having that conversation because we don't actually discover this issue and then go solve it. We just keep talking about it. So I think it's tedious work, but it's so, so important.
And we like to
Because
mask
it,
stuff. So,
yes,
one of the things, I'm a small niche consulting firm, and I want to be. I don't believe in big transformations. Most of the time, I don't believe they're needed. In some cases, they are. You get two companies, you merge, you want to transform into something bigger and better. Fantastic. But, too many companies are like, oh, our mission statement and our philosophy and this and that. You don't even know what defines your margin. You don't
yes,
even know where your data comes from, and half your data is not even used. Until you understand the foundation of things, you, there's no way you can make a informed decision. And perfect example is workflows. You must understand the system. You must understand the team members. You must understand the data. Once you understand all that and why things go through the process, you then can look at the process in a different way and look for upgrades. Look to make it more efficient. Just, look at all the layoffs happening right now. Oh, AI is great. Put AI in and let's lay off thousands of people. Yeah, that's not working. And that's because we didn't learn and research and investigate first.
absolutely. So that alignment piece brings me to one of my favorite topics, and I think we share this kind of passion for the space between the functions is such an area in business that things fall down, go wrong, break down, erode. I like to believe that people come to work to do their best, and I think they generally do. But why do you have a bunch of people doing their best and it's still, let's be straight, it still sucks. So why I believe, and I think you agree, or I'd love you to share with me. It's the in between the functions where it's hard. So tell me a little bit more about kind of what you think about that, how you might handle it.
First, I think a lot of employees in many companies, the larger the company, the worse it is, just because of the bureaucracy we've talked about already, is I think employees, one, have too much on their plate, and I think they do too much that isn't at the core of their job. And what I mean by that is they go chasing, and putting out fires. They go chase answers. They're working on problems. They're doing these little things that AI could do. They're spending too much of their time wasted instead of thinking. And that is one of the things that bothered me with my last job. I love the company I worked for, but I was spending so much time of what's wrong and chasing, the different aspects instead of sitting at my desk and thinking about solutions and thinking about where this could go in the future. I'm a big brainstormer. I love think tanks. I could sit around with 20 people at a board table and do a think tank all day long. Tell me your problems, and I will spit out solutions like they're cards. I never guarantee my solutions are great. I guarantee I bring solutions to the table, which causes people to think, and I think that's far more important. Although some of my solutions are pretty good, but yeah, I think once we look at that and trim down people, functions change and the gaps shrink because the minor stuff that humans don't need to do can be handled elsewhere. And then people in finance need to be thinking about margins. They need to be thinking about strategy. They need to be thinking about, can we pay off our line of credit quicker? Operations needs to think, how do we get more efficient? How do we get the product to the customer quicker? And cheaper. We don't need to be sitting there writing 400 emails and doing the little stuff. And I think those are the gaps that hold back many companies.
I think so, and I can't remember where I saw it, but somebody in my network was speaking about about that team is firefighting together isn't necessarily like it might feel good that you're solving the problems, but the whole building your culture around firefighting, you actually need to go take a tough step back from that and really find the root cause of things.
That's a
So
company that doesn't understand risk assessment, in my opinion.
yeah, interesting. So for those listening, if they were had a process today in their like something that's just messy, painful, and you've seen this before. Now you and I are typically the people who go solve these. But if somebody watching has something that's not working, kind of what advice would you give? Like what's the first thing to do when they have something that like it needs fixing, but like where do I start? How do I know?
Stop accusing in your own head, systems, people, whatever. Start investigating. Grab a magnifying glass, metaphorically, and
Yes.
start at the beginning and follow the process. If you follow the process, I don't know, have you ever seen Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase?
Maybe a long time ago.
One of my favorite movies. I watch it, at least 50 times a year around the holidays. But he can't get the lights on his house to work, and he tries and he gets frustrated. And he kicks things, breaks things, throws a fit. Dude, follow the extension cord back to the plug. How does they test the plug? Did the plug work? No, it's attached to a switch. Turn the switch on. Look, there we go. But again, for comedic value, they make it into a big piece. But it does prove a point. People go, I don't know. We need more staff. We need to hire more. Sandra's doing something wrong. And it's like, guys, no, stop. Start at the beginning and just walk through it. At some given point, you're going to scratch your head and go, why? And that is one of the most valuable words in business is why. Why do we do this? Why was this company formed? Why did we hire so and so? Why do we have this department? Why? Those questions are fantastic because when you can answer them, you're great. And if you can't answer them, then you have a bigger discussion on your hands. Why is this not working? What is not working about? So investigate.
I love it. It's sometimes it's the simple answer that we need help to get to.
Less is more.
That brings me to something really interesting is the idea about tiny tweaks can save us good money. So we've spoken before about a really fantastic example of that. I'd love you to share with our those watching and listening where you've had that in your work history and where it really paid off.
It started as an accident, to be honest. I just started, with the company. I was going through reports, making sales calls for them, and I was looking at sales trends to see who I should call. And I noticed an in-house fee that we charged used to be a lot of money. We used to rake in a great deal of money. And then over a decade, it shrunk and it shrunk and it shrunk. And where it was $40,000 to $60,000 a month prior, it was now $8,000. And me being curious, which is not necessarily a good thing sometimes, not for a newbie, I pulled reports and I started investigating. And then I went to the programmer and I was like, what causes this? And he's like, oh, this. And then I ran another report. And I found that the reason our income in that area had gone down was because we kept turning the fee off for people to be kind. They had late, bad months and they couldn't pay their bill or whatever the case is. But we'd never turn it back on. Sat down with the programmer and said, could we automate this to where it'll automatically update every 30 days, 60 days and return them back on? He goes, yeah, that would take me about 10 minutes. It's okay. Don't do anything. I'm a nobody, just asking questions. And I went and sat down with one of the owners and said, I think I can make you $50,000 a month. Are you interested in listening? And he was a CPA and he was like, yes, by all means, sit down. And he had already know I was helping with sales. He had already had a little, the trust was building. And I told him what was going on and he goes, where's your proof? And I flooded him with Excel files, which is his favorite pastime. And within 30 days, we had a plan on how to turn them back on, how to automate it, a new process for people to follow, and more importantly, communications to the customers that we were turning it back on, and they may not have noticed it for a while. A year later, we were $52,000 on average per month compared to 6 to 8.
Wow,
And
that's incredible.
all it took was flipping a switch inside of a system. That's it.
That's incredible. And I love to find those wins in the little things where we
Who knew a
make
switch could
assumptions.
equal $500,000?
Yes. And it's like we think, oh, it's set up this way. I know. Well, when we set that up, that was 4 years ago.
But we
And
always do it that way.
you had one part in setting it up. Like it's changed since then, right?
That's the scary part, Sarah, is that's the way we've always done it. That's it. The decline is,
That
it's
the
just the
way we've
decline.
always
We've
done it,
accepted
and
it.
that I get so passionate when I hear about, well, we've always done it that way. And I immediately go, breathe, okay. Like just like you passionate in like Just because we've done it that way until now doesn't mean this way is going to get us to where we want to go.
And
It's just,
investigation's not going to hurt anything. You investigate, and if you find that it works, it's correct, and there's no reason to change, then great. It's been looked at, it's been verified, you give it your seal of approval, and you move on. But if you don't check, I almost guarantee you there's going to be a problem. Because wouldn't you know it, the times we don't check, something goes wrong. We just had our roof fixed. We check all the time. We check annually. Roof looked good. Yep, everything looks good. Something didn't look right. Had them come out, they fixed it. But the last 3 years, they've checked it and everything's looked good. And no leaks, no nothing. But that prevented a leak from happening. And
absolutely.
if I hadn't looked, would it have leaked? Maybe, maybe not. But eventually it would. Eventually it would have eroded and caused damage. And hopefully
Yes.
I saved more money from damages not happening than I did paying. That's the hope.
And what can happen in business, and it's a perfectly acceptable thing to do, it happens, is sometimes in operations I find we always want to think through really well and want to put our best foot forward, but sometimes the business has to move faster than us technical people like. So we have to make quick decisions. We have to do good enough to get it shipped. Those are the situations that should have a review. So it's okay if you really have to move quickly to get it to market. That's what the business has to do. But going back and just reviewing all of those things regularly helps us prevent anything bad from happening or any of waste that might have kind of crept in the process.
And it's not a glass half empty or a glass half full concept to say, okay, we're going to do this. We're rushed. We know we're cutting some corners. And I'm not saying cutting corners and making a valuable product that saves lives, but I'm talking about decisions, rolling out new pricing or a new order entry process. But there's no harm in going, does anybody see issues we might face down the road? And then put those on the list and monitor those. But that's also where the friction comes from, because again, that's business. And then you build reports and you build approval steps and you build these. But once the process has been deemed accessible, repeatable, clean, and you're happy with it, you need to scale those down, because those were only temporary in order to cover, the CYA.
Yes.
If you're not going to, if you're not going to clean it up later, then eventually the drag is going to get you. So, I'm with you in the fact that we got to move quick. It's business, and there's not always time to think everything through and have a 9-month, plan. Sometimes it needs to be 2 months.
Yes.
Put the extra layers in to protect yourself. After a period of time that you've already determined, review it, give it the stamp and seal of approval, and take those extra steps away.
I agree. I love it. Well, David, I can't thank you enough for being on the channel with me today. Is there any final things you'd want to leave our viewers with before we say goodbye for the day?
Everything you do, think of perception. Think of other people's perception. Think of yours. It will always lead to success.
Great. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I will put your information in the comments so that anybody watching this wants to reach out and get in touch, they'll be able to do that. And thanks so much for coming on today. Such a great conversation. Really appreciate your time.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.